Let's get more analysis now from Al Jazeera's senior political analyst Marwan Bishara. Marwan, we were hearing from Natasha that the US has pulled out of UNESCO before. It did it in the 80s. It had pulled funding from UNESCO much more recently. So why now? And also, does it matter if the US pulls out of UNESCO?
Well, of course it does. I mean, at one point, it used to be something like 1/5 of the UNESCO budget, like the United Nations, would come from the United States, the richest country in the world, superpower, with a huge influence around the world. And UNESCO, of course, served American interest, as the Secretary General of the UNESCO said, in terms of education in Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq, wherever the United States creates a mess, the UNESCO goes out there, tries to clean the mess by educating people for moderation against extremism and so on and so forth. But clearly, the American president does not miss a chance to humiliate his allies. Because, at the end of the day, UNESCO is hosted in Paris. France makes sure that the UNESCO will remain to be a very, vibrant, important, educational, heritage-type organization and so on and so forth. Just like President Trump humiliated the Germans on a number of fronts, the French on climate change, probably next on the Iran deal, now on the UNESCO. This America First doctrine, if you will, or strategy, seems to say America first, the world last, meaning we don't give a damn about the rest of the world. UNESCO can go to hell. But at the end of the day, the United States owes the UNESCO $600 million it has to pay. And I think they're trying to probably get away with that, as well as, create those false pretenses that the UNESCO is against Israel, because the UNESCO called Palestinian sites Palestinian. For many, this is quite hypocritical.
Let's now go to our main story, actually. Speaking of Palestinian sites, Palestinian territories, we're hearing that the two factions, Fatah and Hamas, have reconciled in some way. As we were hearing from Harry Fawcett in Ramallah, still a lot of details, a little bit obscure on key issues. But what has been your sense of this? A step in the right direction, but could this really lead to political unity?
Barbara, they say necessity is the mother of all inventions. And clearly, there's a necessity for both Palestinian main factions to reach a deal, because both factions have come to a dead end. The Fatah faction and President Abbas, in the diplomatic process with Israel and the United States, that came to a dead end 24 years after the Oslo process. And Hamas has come to a dead end in the Gaza Strip, completely incarcerated, completely bankrupt. Its administration of Gaza is not working. Its strategy of resistance is not working. And this whole division among the Palestinians is really counterproductive for both factions and certainly for the rest of the Palestinian people. So, necessity being the mother of all inventions, they are really inventing all the right justifications for why they're going to make a deal 10 years after they went into this conflict in Gaza over who rules Gaza. Be that as it may, I think what they've done is they agreed on the mechanism of how to move forward, that they agree that they need to come together in some kind of a national consensus government, future elections, joint security apparatuses, and so on and so forth. So they agree on the mechanism about these things, and they signed the first protocol about administering Gaza and the border crossing between Gaza and Egypt, which is apparently a very important question for Egypt, because it talks about security, stability, and so on and so forth. So certainly this has become a priority. Will this continue to move forward on a number of other important issues? Probably it will. I mean, they will continue to sign those protocols. They will agree on a number of things by the end of this month, next month, and maybe in a year, if the circumstances allowed it, and the international quartet, meaning the United States, Russia, United Nations, European Union, would push for elections, they might actually produce them. So they will end the fighting, the infighting, they will end the killing and the imprisoning and the incitement between Fatah and Hamas. But will that liberate Palestine? Will that create an independent Palestinian state? Will that put an end to the Israeli illegal settlements? Will that put an end to Israeli assaults in occupied East Jerusalem? Of course, none of that. This is just for them to get their house in order for them to be one united people with one united program. That's the least they can do.
There's a lot to discuss on this, and I know you'll be with us in the studio for the next few hours. We will talk about it again. For the moment, Marwan Bishara, thank you.
Thank you.